God never ceases to amaze me. I had kind of a different introduction planned, but I'm just going to go into it. Walter, we did not talk about anything necessarily that I was going to talk about tonight, but as you set up the praise and worship music tonight, that last song specifically, the Stand By Hillsong, couldn't have been a more appropriate song for what we're talking about tonight. And I want to talk about discipleship. And a lot of this is going to be based on a book by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I don't know if you know who Bonhoeffer is. If you don't, you need to get to know who Bonhoeffer is, because phenomenal guy. He was a German theologian and teacher and spy, and he had his hand in just about everything. And there's a new book out about him. It's not that it's a couple years old. Phenomenal story. I would recommend that you read it, take a look at it, because his life is nothing short of amazing. And Bonhoeffer, he wrote a book by this exact same title, The Cost of Discipleship, okay? The Cost of Discipleship. And as I'm sitting there listening to that song, and I love that song, I sit there and I think about my life as a follower of Christ. And I think about just the words to that song, and when you truly understand what Jesus has done, when you truly understand what justification is, when you truly understand how horrible I am, but how great God is, the only appropriate response is to do exactly what it says, and I stand in awe, you know? What can I say? What can I do? There's nothing more to say. There's nothing more to do but just offer my life to you. That's it. That's the response. And as you read specifically the New Testament, and you see people as Peter is preaching, as Paul is preaching, as the disciples are preaching, that is the response that's coming over. You look at Pentecost, and they have people come running up to them. They were pricked at the heart. What can I do? I'm moved, man. I'm moved. What can I do? And that's the response. That's what God calls us to. As Christ sat his disciples down, that's what he called him to. And sometimes I think American Christianity gets this wrong. And although we correctly preach that discipleship is a free gift, which it is, correctly preach that salvation is a free gift, which is 100% true, 100% biblical. One of the things we forget to tack onto that is that, yes, salvation is a free gift, but here's the thing, and Bonhoeffer says this beautifully, okay? Salvation is a free gift, but listen, discipleship will cost you everything. Salvation costs you nothing. It is completely free. Faith in Christ alone. But listen, the call then is to discipleship, and that will cost you everything. He demands your life. And again, as the song correctly portrays, that is the only appropriate response. That's it. What can I say? What can I do? There's nothing but offer my life to you. And so I want to start out this morning, because as we focus on discipleship, as we look at it, here's what we need to understand. We need to understand, first of all, what it is, okay? What is a disciple? I want to take a look at this. A disciple is one who does what? A disciple is one who believes in Jesus. And you say, well, of course, that's a given. And I'm not so sure it is. I'm not so sure we understand what this word believe means. Because if we did, we would have a lot more disciples of Christ. There's a book out in the last 2 years by a pastor by the name of Kyle Idleman. And you'll notice I quote a lot of books, because I'm not that smart, but other people are, and I like to quote smart people. All right? Because I don't like to quote myself. I'm not that smart. But he wrote this book called I'm Not a Fan. And the whole premise of the book is there's a whole lot of fans out there. There's a lot of fans of Jesus Christ. They like to wear the t-shirt. They like to go to the rallies. They like to cheer from the sidelines. And I don't know about you, but I'm not a huge sports watching fan. I was an athlete growing up. I wrestled my entire life, went to college, wrestled in college, and my boys wrestle, and my daughter play. I like to coach, and I like to do all that stuff. But one of the things that's weird to me is to see a lot of armchair quarterbacks. And that always is frustrating to me, because I don't get it. My wife's brother, my wife's from Alabama, huge Crimson Tide fan, huge. Has a room in his home dedicated to the Tide. He has a replica of the stadium, Bear Bryant posters up everywhere. And I just don't get it, And the way he talks about the Tide, he'll talk, they did this, they should do this, they could do this better. And I remember the first time I heard him talking, and this was such an anomaly to me. I was like, did you play for them? No. Did you go to school there? No. And I'm thinking, do you know one of the players? No. I'm thinking, well, there's a reason you're not coaching for them, No, I didn't say that. I want to be good with the family, right? But that's my thought process is you're so involved in this, but here's the thing, the truth of the matter is you're a fan, you sit on the sidelines, you like to shout things, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this could be so much better, but here's the truth is you're not a player, you're not in the game, and really you affect it none. That's what you have to offer, nothing. And so many people who call themselves believers find themselves exactly in the exact same process. Is I like to cheer, I like to point out what's wrong with the church, I like to do all that, I like to wear the t-shirt and put the little fish on my car, but listen, honestly, I'm not in the game. I affect it in fact, my effect is none. That's what it is. Because I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Christianity. I'm a fan of Jesus. And I would say that I believe, but James puts it best when he says, okay, show me your faith by your works, because they have to go hand in hand. If I believe, I follow. That's what belief is. Do you believe Jesus is the Son of God? Then you follow. That's what you do. If I say I believe and then my works and actions show differently, then guess what? The logical conclusion is, no, you don't. No, you don't. So a disciple is one who believes in Jesus, who truly believes in Jesus. A disciple is one who worships Jesus. This was one of the differences in Christianity, one of the arguments I used to point out that Jesus is indeed not just God as the Son, but he is God. He's part of the Trinity, because we see the church change focuses. You see the New Testament point to Jesus and people start worshiping Jesus. Well, the law says worship God and only God alone. No other gods will you have. Well, they can do that. Why? Because Jesus is God. It's God incarnate, God in the flesh, as he sent his Son down. And a disciple is one who worships Jesus. Number 3, a disciple is one who serves Jesus. I am so stoked for you guys. If this is your first night here, then you're going to have no clue what I'm talking about. I am so excited for you guys. I'm so excited for our church. You guys get to be a part of something coming in September that, is huge. It's awesome. You guys get to be a part of something that's original. This 5th service that we're coming into play with Pastor Shagun, and he's going to be kind of leading that, and you guys are going to be the ones serving in that. What an exciting opportunity. I'm so stoked for you guys. Because here's the thing, you guys, I see this thing exploding. I think it's going to be a huge thing for this community. It's going to be a huge thing for this church. And here's the thing, you guys get to be a part of that. You get to serve in that. And so as you come up upon that, we've got 3 months before that comes. Man, I hope you guys are praying for Pastor Yu, and I hope you're praying for the Remix as they get involved, praying that God would work, because if he's not in it, it's going to fail, right? But here's the thing, here's the great part about it. If he's in it, it's gonna go nuts. And so a disciple is one who serves Jesus, and I see you guys doing that, and I love that. This opportunity is awesome. Number 4, a disciple is one who follows Jesus. You pursue him. You go after him. One of the things that you have a lot of kids and adults, and I do a lot of counseling, and I have very limited time. I've got a family too, and so I've got to be careful as to how I utilize that time and time management. And one of the things that I like to do in my counseling is every single time I will give homework. Every single time I will give some sort of homework. For this reason, I want them to pursue truly what they want, okay? They tell me they want it. I want that. But all of a sudden when you give them work, wait, I got to do work? Did you get that? Wait a minute, I didn't sign up for that, right? I coached wrestling, and I had so many of my athletes come out, I want to be a state champ, I want to be a state champ, I want to be a state. Well, listen, I know how to do that. I can get you there. I can put you in that position. Let me show you the path. And all of a sudden, it gets really, really hard, and they go, whoa, no, I just want to be. I don't want to do what it takes to get there. And see, and Jesus does the exact same thing with his disciples. Lastly, a disciple is one who obeys Jesus. Are you obedient to his teachings? Do you obey him? Or do you pick and choose what you want to obey? You know, I see some people, I like this Jesus that is the progressive Jesus. He's kind of hippie. He wears hemp clothing, drinks lattes, he has feathered hair, right? And that's the Jesus I like. That's the Jesus I want to follow. That's the Jesus I want to obey. The problem is that's not Jesus. It's a wimpy imitation. And unfortunately, that's the way we take our Jesus. We take our Jesus the way we take our coffee. I know a bunch of people went out for coffee right before, and we take our coffee. I like a shot of French vanilla. I like a shot of, double caffeine or whatever. And we take Jesus the exact same way. I want Jesus, but I want him with a little postmodernism, and I want Jesus with a little shot of Hinduism on this side of here. This sort of world belief. That's how I take my Jesus, right? The Burger King theology. I'll have it my way. Doesn't work that way. Jesus did not call his disciples to Burger King theology, that's for sure. And the beauty of this, guys, is the beauty of the scriptures is this. Jesus never hemmed and hawed around this. We have a society that starves for realism. We have reality television shows left and right, even though they're far from reality. But we think they are. We have this perception, right? But we have this starvation. I want it real. I want it real. I want it real. Well, here's the thing. The most real book you can possibly pick up is the Word. It's real. It gets real. Jesus sits his disciples down, and before they start to go out, he teaches them, and he doesn't hold anything back. He doesn't hide anything. He doesn't try to be, some kind of used car salesman. Let me see what we got here, okay? And so he's going to pound these three things. I need to get going. I'm lagging behind. So I want to look at Luke chapter 14. This is where he starts. He sits them down, and he says, listen, we need to get real. We need to get real, because I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to tell you exactly what it's going to take to follow me. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to try to sell it, to something that it's not. How many of you guys have ever had that happen, right? You get into a business, or you get into a position, or you take a Sunday school class or something, and they really undersold it or they oversold it, right? And you get in there and you go, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be. Jesus could have easily done that, but that's not what he does. Take a look what he does here, and he pounds this nail 3 different times here in Luke chapter 14. Now, large crowds were going along with him. He turned and he says to them, so he's got this huge crowd of followers, right? And so now he decides, listen, it's time to separate the fans from the followers. Here's what we got to do. I got to get real with them. He says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father, mother, wife, children, and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. And we have this crazy moment here. This is kind of odd. And a lot of people think it's odd. And here's what Jesus says. Listen, it's going to get hard. And here's the first nail that he pounds. He says it's going to get real hard. But listen, you got to press on. You got to press on, because tough things are coming. And he uses this crazy word, hate. And it's crazy because no one has ever loved like Jesus. No one. And then all of a sudden he starts throwing out this word hate, and it seems like a contradiction. Is that what it is? Is that what this word is? What does it mean to hate as Jesus uses it? And really, Darrell Bach, he's a commentator nowadays. He writes commentaries on Scripture. His commentary on Luke is kind of the gold standard. That's the way scholars look at it. And he put it this way, and I liked the way he put it. How could Jesus say this? And basically what he said is this call to hate is simply more of a contrast to show what your love for Jesus should look like. You should love me so much that compared to the love for your parents, compared to the love for your friends, compared to the love for your brothers and sisters, compared to the love of your own life, it should look like hate. That's what it should look like. That's what I'm calling to you. That's what I'm calling you to. And secondly, listen, it's going to get real hard. And here's what he says. He says, listen, if you're going to follow me, opposition is coming. It's coming. And here's what's going to happen. Some of you, listen, your parents are going to hate you. Some of your parents are going to disown you because you follow me. And it's going to get hard. It's going to get real hard. But you need to press on. Don't quit. Press on. I think about a young lady here. About a couple years back, there was a young lady here, a young girl, 16, 17 years old, who converted from Islam to Christianity here in the United States, and she ran away from home. In fact, she goes running to Florida. It was a big thing in the news. The parents are trying to get this girl to come back. The girl's scared to death, and she says, listen, if I go back, my parents, my dad, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. Because in Islam, under the Sharia law, I cannot convert to Christianity. In fact, if I don't repent and convert back, they can lop my head off. And it has happened multiple times. Even in the United States, this is happening. Honor killings. And we see this call. This is literal. This is legit. This is happening to this day. And Jesus says, listen, expect opposition. You follow me, it's coming. He's talking to these people. Listen, you want to follow me? And here, the coach in me tends to look at it this way. You know, I bring my team into the locker room. We're getting ready to face this huge, we're having a dual meet, and we're going out, and I look at this. That's kind of the way I look at it, and I think this is the worst pep talk ever, right? All right, guys, they're bigger than us. They're stronger than us. They're probably going to beat you down and hurt you, and there's really no chance of us winning, but let's go, and rah. I'm looking at this speech going, what are you doing here, right? What are you doing? And he says, listen, expect opposition. And here's the problem is do we really take this call literally? Or do we find ourselves constantly choosing others, choosing things over Jesus? But this is the call. This is the call. Don't choose anyone over me. Your brothers, your sisters, your mother, your father, whatever it is, it should look like hate. I'm first. I'm first. Do we do that? Do we do that? Jesus, again, remember, he doesn't hide this. He doesn't say, listen, this may happen. He says, listen, opposition is coming. It's going to get hard. Press on. Press on. Press on. I think about a missions organization that sends 20-somethings actually overseas to various parts of the country, specifically where the gospel is, sometimes, it's very, you're met with violence. And so one of the things that they do, one of the acts that they have these kids do is they build them coffins. That's literally what they do. And before they send them out, what they do is they pack their coffin. They pack all their stuff in their coffin, all their earthly possessions, and then they write a letter, okay? They seal the letter, they put it in the coffin, and they go. And obviously this is a symbolic act to say, listen, this is what it's about. You're giving your life. That's what you're doing. That's the call. And one young lady did this, and she went overseas, and I believe it was in Afghanistan, and she was killed for the cause of Christ. And so they took her letter and they mailed it to her church, and her pastor got up and read it. And I want to read it to you this morning. And it's a good one. It's rough, okay? And so here's what she says. Dear pastor, you should only be opening this letter in the event of my death. When God calls, there are no regrets. I've tried to share my heart with you as much as possible, my heart for the nations, and I understood this one thing. I was not called to a place. I was called to him. To obey was my objective. To suffer was expected. His glory is my reward. His glory is my reward. The missionary heart cares more than some think is wise. It risks more than some think is safe, and it dreams more than some think is practical. And then it expects more than some thinks is possible. I was not called to comfort or success, I was called to obedience. There is no joy outside of knowing Jesus and serving him. I love you. I love my church family. In his care, Karen. And you see this example here, where she takes this message of Christ, this first point, and it got hard. But what did she do? She pressed on. She pressed on. And this is a tough thing for me to speak on. Having been in ministry now for almost 15 years, having worked with so many students, adults, and things like that, I've seen a lot of kids grow up, and here's what I've seen. I've seen kids start out, they get on fire, man, and within a year it gets hard, and they quit. It gets hard, and they quit. It gets hard, and they quit. And a lot of times they quit, and they look at me almost like, I didn't know it was going to be like this. Well, then you don't know Jesus, because he's really clear about it. He's really clear. So let's take a look at his next point here, because he continues in verse 28. He says, "For which one of you, when he wants to build a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he's laid a foundation, is not able to finish it all, those who observe, they ridicule him. They say, man, this guy began a tower, was able to unfinish. They make fun of him. They talk about him behind his back, right? And here's what Jesus says. He says, listen, okay? I've told you this is going to cost you a ton. It may cost you your family. Press on. Secondly, he says, listen, you need to think this through. You need to be logical and reasonable about this. Are you really understanding what you're getting into? Because I don't want to hide it from you. And he says, listen, here's what's going to happen, man. You're not really going to count the cost, and you're going to quit. And he says, don't. He says, press on. Point 2, again, the same thing. Press on. Count the cost. Right. Count it up. Know what it is. And press on. Because here's the thing, when you really look at the cost, here's what you're going to see. You're going to say, whoa, that's a lot. Really, it's everything. That's the call. Press on. That's what Jesus says, press on. And here's what happens. So many people look at this, and I don't know if they count the cost. I don't know if they look at the cost. I don't know if they really mull it over and chew on it in their minds. And maybe we do this poorly. I don't know. But it's almost like we treat the call to Christ like we would, some crazy wedding ideal. It's like the bride who looks at the wedding. It's coming up, and you plan for the wedding, right? And you got this huge party in mind, and everyone looks beautiful, and you got it all laid out. You got everything planned. I mean, year in advance or 6 months in advance or whatever. You get married. You had a great time, man. It was awesome. And the next day, the bride goes to the groom, and she says, "Now I want a divorce." and the groom says, "What?" And she says, well, that's the part I like. I like the party. But now marriage, this is hard. Now it gets hard. Now I'm committed to you for the rest of my life. I didn't sign up for that. I like the fun part. Who does that, right? Christians do. That's who does it. It would be like a soldier who he's going into the army, he's going into the military, and they give him his gun, and he shines it up. They give him this fancy uniform, loves standing in that, right, showing off to people, and then they send him off to war, and all of a sudden people start shooting at him, and he goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't sign up for this. I'm out of here. I'm out of here. And Jesus says, people don't do that. In fact, I think that is the most detrimental thing to Christianity today, is we have so many who claim to be disciples and are destroying the name of Christ. I don't know how many people I've talked to. I taught apologetics back home, so I debate and talk to a lot of unbelievers, atheists specifically, agnostics, and I cannot tell you how many times the number one problem they have with Christianity is they are so hypocritical. So hypocritical. And that's a problem. And 9 times out of 10, it goes back to this idea. Did they count the cost? Are you the soldier who signed up to get the uniform and the gun, but I don't want bullets flying at me? Well, Jesus says, listen, the bullets are coming. They're coming. And I haven't been doing my PowerPoint, sorry. I get in the zone. It's not good. So I'm going to put this up there if you want to fill that in. And here's what we need to understand. Jesus wants you all the time. He wants all of you. He doesn't want part of you. And here's what we need to understand. Listen, this is a real battle. We have a real enemy. And I don't think we get that. Because, oh, well, I can't quite see him. I can't quite feel him sometimes physically. We don't think he's real, but he's real. So Jesus hits this third point now, okay? He gets to the end of Luke chapter 14 here, or close to it, and he says, okay, he hits this point again. Or what king, when he sets out to meet another king in battle, will not first sit down and consider whether he's strong enough with 10,000 men to encounter the one coming against him with 20,000? He says, what leader goes to battle but doesn't look at the strategy before? He's like, no one does that. Or else, while the other is still far away, he sends a delegation. Listen, we can't win. We better look for peace. So then none of you can be my disciple who does not give up all his possessions. Listen to what he calls them to. Again, this is real, guys. It's as real as it gets. I'm not hiding what it takes to be a disciple of mine. It's everything. It's everything. It's your life. That's when he talks about in the first section where he says a cross. Take up your cross. That's not some kind of stupid burden that we take an analogy. Well, my parents are not believers. It's my cross to bear. No. I don't have, dial-up, or I don't have cable internet. I have dial-up. That's my cross to bear. No! A cross to bear. These guys wouldn't know exactly what it meant. A cross to bear it's a death sentence. When you follow Christ, it's to the death. It's to the death. And he says, listen, here's what it costs. Everything. Everything. And if you can't do this, you're not my disciple. If you want to be my disciple, this is the cost. And he hits that third point again. He says, listen, it's going to get hard. Sometimes you're going to be 10,000 going up against 20,000. And he says, press on. Press on. Don't quit. It's going to get hard. I was watching a documentary one time about Galatia. And Galatia was a huge city back in the day. It was a big trade center. And it was defended really well for hundreds of years. But here's, as I was looking at this, and the guy who was looking at it brought this point up too. When you look at Galatia, it's really weird because it's flat. And so, I was kind of looking at this guy asked this question that was just, it was so obvious. He said, listen, obviously during the time when Galatia would be present, the modes of war were so different. He said, how did Galatia last for so long and do away with outside invaders and defend itself for hundreds of years when it has no defensible position? How did that happen? And here was his response. It was insane. He said, well, they did battle a little bit differently. He said, all the soldiers in Galatia would bring their families to battle. And they would sit them on a hill outside overlooking the battle. And dads would take their kids, and they would take their wife, and they would sit them on the outskirts overlooking the battle. They would kiss their wife, they would kiss their kids, and they'd say, listen, if I don't come back, guess what? Then, honey, you're going to belong to one of these guys over here. Kids, you're going to be a slave. I don't know what they're going to do to you. And so as I go off to fight, that's what I have to lose. And the soldiers went off to battle, and listen, you fight differently that way. And they didn't lose. They didn't lose because they had so much to lose. And they pressed on. Even though that most people would say this is not a defensible position. Sometimes it looks like we're in a battle. I look at the culture today and I think, man, God, can we win this? Even though I know that he wins. I know that. But here's what he says. It's going to be hard, man. It's going to look, in some cases, it's going to look like the enemy's winning. But understand this. Press on. Press on. Because he's not. He's not winning. He's not winning. And so, here's what I'd like to caution you on. Be careful of false testimonies. I often hear, I don't know if you guys have this radio station down here called K-Love. You guys have Star 99. Do you have K-Love? Okay. We have K-Love back home, and I like K-Love. Don't get me wrong. I've been on a K-Love cruise. It was actually a lot of fun. But a lot of times I like to call them K-Love testimonies. And you hear this thing, and he said, well, you hear some young lady or young man get on there, and they say, well, my life was horrible. I was on drugs, and I was abused, and all this stuff. But then I found Jesus, and now I'm healthy, and my relationships are outstanding. They're awesome, and I'm rich, and I'm, and they go on of this. And I think to myself, this is not a normal Christian testimony. In fact, as I look biblically at it, this is a really false testimony. In fact, as Christ talks to his disciples, he talks to this crowd of people. He says, listen, this is a real Christian testimony. It looks something like this, that, listen, my life was hard. I was going through some really hard times, and Christ, he saved me, and guess what? It got harder. It got harder. And in fact, he told me this. He told me it was going to get harder. But you know what? He also told me this. It's worth it. It's worth it. And so be careful of these false testimonies. Because again, we have a real enemy. This is a real war. And here's the thing. There are real casualties and there are real quitters. And what amazes me is we have a country full of guys in our culture who want to do a lot of things. Here's what they want to do. They want to fight in a battle. They want to save the princess, right? They want to take the kingdom. They want to conquer, right? They want to do all these things, and so they do it on Mario Brothers, right? I saved the princess. If you go to John's Pizza Pub, my initials are the high score, right? And they do this. The crazy thing is, that's what this book is all about. That's the premise of this book. You want to do those things. That's what Jesus is talking about here. But it's harder than picking up a joystick. You got to get off the couch. You got to put some pants on. Okay? Please put pants on. Okay? You got to do that. And Jesus says, listen, it's going to be hard. Press on. Are you one of these? I taught history for 10 years, and I remember teaching on some of the battles in the Greek culture, and one of the things that some of these great generals would do is they would take their boats across, and a place they wanted to conquer, a place they wanted to take over, they'd shore them up, boom, and as they were checking the countryside, developing a strategy, some of the greatest generals would go back to the boats and they would burn them. So the guys come back, and the general, this is his speech. Listen, we got nowhere to go. It's forward or death. Let's go. I love that idea, right? I wouldn't have loved it at the time, but I love it when I think about this. That's the call Jesus gives. Listen, when I give my life to Christ, this is the call. It's forward or death. Forward or death. And Jesus says, press on. Press on. Don't quit. It's going to be so easy to quit, and guess what? It's going to get hard. Don't quit. Press on. So where are you? Are you a fan? Or are you a follower? Does your life make it? Are you in the game? Are you an armchair quarterback, right? They should do this. The church has so many... Yeah, great. Then get in there and get in the game and do something about it. Does your life count? Does it make a difference? Who do you serve? Do you follow Jesus? Again, you've got this huge opportunity coming up to serve the church in a massive way. How are you involved? And if you're not, why? What are you giving? Have you given all to Jesus? And this is a tough thing when you really meditate on it, when you really think about it. Have you given all? It's a convicting thing for me. And this idea, am I pouring myself out? I found myself in a huge conundrum one year when my middle son, Aiden, was born. About 4 months into the pregnancy, my wife, I remember the day like it was yesterday. We were Black Friday out shopping right after Thanksgiving. And my wife comes to me, she says, something's not right, let me go to the bathroom. She comes back out, she's crying, she's in tears. She says, we need to get to the hospital right now. So we go. At that point, I didn't even know if boy or girl, we didn't know anything. And get to the emergency room, they rush us in to get a sonogram. And it was weird because the lady taking the sonogram, she really encouraged us. She was like, oh, everything looks good, the heartbeat's good, everything's great, yeah, da-da-da. And we had this amazing conversation, and wow, man, we were really relieved. They sent us back to a waiting room, and the doctor comes in, and we're kind of laughing and joking at that point. Everything was, all the tension had kind of been released, and the doctor says, okay, so we're going to send you guys home. We're going to check you out. We're like, all right, great. And he says, and so Heather, when you lay down tonight, probably sometime in the next 24 hours, you're going to get some cramping. And basically what that means is you're losing the baby. And he said it just like this, And it was like, wham! We both, and I need things explained very clearly. Apparently that wasn't clear enough. And I said, whoa. Are you telling me to go home and wait for my baby to die? And his response was, yes, that's what I'm telling you to do. And it was like, what the heck just happened? And we both leave the hospital weeping, and we get home. My wife went upstairs to bed, and I just sat downstairs in the kitchen, and I remember having this conversation with God. And I was broken. I was beaten down. It was at that point, too, that we found out it was a boy. This was my first son. And I remember having this conversation with God, and the words coming out, Reuben, will you give me your son? And my response was, no. No, I will not. And I remember thinking about all the times I've taught on prayer and all the times I've taught, your will be done. That's how we pray. Your will be done. And I thought, you know what? No, I'm not cool with this. I'm not okay with this. No, you cannot have my son. And as I wrestled with God that night, in tears, and I spoke very frankly with him and got real with God. Ultimately, I remember a breaking point about 5 a.m, God just, in his soft whisper, said, that's what I'm asking of you. And I just, okay. Is that why my son lived? I don't know. He's alive now today and crazy as ever. All right? But listen, here's what I do know. I know what God asks. I know what he asks. Are you willing to give it? Are you willing to give it? How do you pour yourself out? How do you worship him? What has been your response, and what legacy will you leave? What legacy will you leave? What will it look like? Because here's the truth of the matter, okay? It does matter how you live your life. It does matter. And unfortunately, here's the truth, and this is rampant in the church. So many do so little for the one who gave so much. And so, as the song says, the appropriate response, guys, is what can I say? What can I do, God? Nothing but offer everything that I have to you. And that's what he asks.